Evening. Good afternoon. It's November 18th. I want to get into some other things I talked about on my show because what I'm going to talk about, all those things I talked about, some people didn't like what I had to say about James and all that crap and his wife, but I'm sorry. She gets involved in politics and she rides a damn train like everybody else. This is America. You don't get some pass. You want to play, then you play. You play on the field of play. And then, so we get into this dumbass behind me because that's his class. Remember when he's telling us about this is during the purchase card thing and shit like that? Well, Danny, I'm calling you out just like Donna. You're a freaking liar. So I'm going to talk to you about my lawsuit against the county because we're not in mediation. There's nothing I can't talk about. It's all public record. I just won't talk about anything I may have mediated. But I'm going to talk about the facts of the case. And the facts of the case is I'm suing the county. And the first thing is for breach of a previous settlement. After I'd sued the county over the same case, if you've been following me for the Adams Homes case, after I sued the county settled with me, and then here's what the county proceeded to do. Part of the settlement was they weren't supposed to help Adams Homes anymore because they had been helping them. They had been helping the developer defend itself from breaking the law. And why? Because the county is or was and still is breaking the law, and they're intentionally doing so with your tax dollars. They're polluting the bay, and Danny knows it, and Donna knows it. Dan Curry's learning about it. Tony's known about it. And Brad Drake, he's had the information, said he was going to do something, and hadn't done a damn thing with it, so we'll ask him what he did at some point. Yeah, Brad, you're a damn liar, too. You know, they're on their uppity up horse, you know, and they're too big to fail. They're not going to admit they're wrong. They want to believe that they can convince all of us that they're the government and they don't make mistakes. Come on, people. So let me tell you that. So we had a lawsuit where basically the county allowed a developer not to follow the rules. They obtained a 400 and I believe 66 permit minor development order without a hearing. That's right. And they changed many of the things. I don't know why that annotate is on there. Anyway, I don't know why that's on there. Hang on. There, I made it go away. So here's what the county did when they settled with me. Then they turned around and made a bunch of false accusations against me, just like they did with Joseph Turner and Quinn Robertson. In my case, they weren't criminal, but they convinced the U.S. attorney to civilly that they had evidence, and then they never could produce that evidence, and they hired the Warner law firm to do it with your tax money. Because it was more important for them to sabotage somebody than to tell the truth. It was more important to spend your tax money on hired gun lawyers to squash the truth than to rather admit that these people like Matt Carpenter and Tony Corman and Michael Gainey and some engineers at Chance Powell. You're a dirty son of a bitch, Chance. That's right. That's you. You dirty POS. That's all you'll ever be. Glad to talk to you about it, Chance, anytime you want to. My life's been impacted by your damn corruption, and that's what Chance is for sale. He's a little rich trust boy who's for sale, and Donna never could hold him responsible, and neither will Danny. Anytime you want to talk about it, Chance, you let me know. You and Charlie Cotton, you're both worthless pieces of shit, and you'll get deposition too. But here's what they did. They settled with me and then created enough lawsuits for me that they didn't have to answer to, but they're answering to them now. So now we had an appellate court decision that overturned the NOPC and notice of proposed change. They've admitted it. The court says they know they're in non-compliance for the NOPC for open space for Sandestin, but yet they're approving, Stephen Showing and them, according to them, are approving projects in Sandestin when they're not allowed to. And they're approving them to a different water standard. Recently, in my court case, the county made the judge think that the lots in Driftwood Estates, where I used to live, the county and other people helped Adams lead the judge to believe that the lots themselves had no drainage requirement. They just didn't have one, which doesn't make sense. They said that they were just allowed to dump all that water into the county right away, and that was their problem. And then the county would illegally dump it in the massive pipe that Donna or Danny or no other commissioner or Brad Drake or anybody will refuse to even drive out and look at. This figment of their imaginations, probably about a 48-inch pipe. That's just one of them. And here we are worried about a county in Georgia water supply getting polluted. But you know who's participating in polluting the water supply here? The county, with your tax money, and they know it. They just don't want you to know it. So they convinced the judge, and that's fine. Just imagine what the award would have been had the county and Adams had to tell the truth, because the judge is not an engineer, and he don't want to believe that the county people and Adams are lying to him. So he said, oh yeah, I don't think those lots, you can't show me, they haven't said anything about the lots having a requirement. So let me read you this letter. And it goes to Danny Glidewell, and that's why his toothless looking mouth is behind me. Him and the county attorney and Matt Carpenter and Andrea Ward, the planning engineer. She's in on this. So Danny asked her. Okay, Danny sends her an email. This ain't years ago. This is just back in 2020. This one he was covering up. And Tony Corman is on this email chain. Yep, Danny Glidewell, Andrea Ward, let's see here. Bill Chapman was originally on it. And Danny sends an email to Andrea Ward and says, can you send me the current drainage standards for Driftwood and Sandestin? Based on all this. So that's what Danny says. And just like Mac tells Danny he's got proof the drainage standards been changed, but Mac can't produce it, and Danny never says nothing about it. He takes Mac, who lost his real estate license for fraud, he takes Mac's word. Okay, well, if the county convinced the judge, and the jury thought the county was at fault, so we'll see what happens when we go to court this time, that the lots didn't have any requirement. Here's what Andrea Ward wrote directly to Danny Glidewell. Doesn't answer him what the standard is. Good morning. We require to be managed for quality and quantity. That's her answer. Quality is achieved via treatment on site using infiltration through soils, and quantity is required for flood mitigation. It is my understanding that the outer perimeter of the Driftwood subdivision was platted in 1976 and does not have a master stormwater plan that encompasses the development taking place on those lots, meaning there were some ditches and they were put in place not to design the water when they did, and then when they adopted a different plan, they cut half of it off on the interior. So it has no retention, no treatment, and the county spent about $400,000 total, so Dr. Henry Harper, their expert, could tell them that they had no treatment in the exterior system. I digress. And as she said, it does not have a master stormwater plan that encompasses the development taking place on these lots. Therefore, single-family homes are required to have an on-site stormwater management system that achieves quality and quantity criteria. End quote. Well, that's exactly what they told the judge they didn't have to have, basically. And the judge believed that. And here this is. So you got Greg Graham's original depositions in engineering that say that that they know that they're supposed to have a 6.7-inch retention standard, but retention and detention are synonymous, according to them. Well, that becomes untrue by the Florida Administrative Code definitions, and the fact that they have an agreement of what retention will be and the amount from 1984. Further, they rule that the county is applying the wrong standard, and retention and detention are not interchangeable, as Dr. Harper clearly points out. So you got that one answer. Then later on, when they decided 6.7 didn't matter. It was just a ½ inch, because they now could no longer use the first answer they gave the public. Well, that came out, and now that's not true. The state sent them letters saying what it was. And now they've been overturned on their NOPC, and they admit that the 84 settlement agreement is in place, but do they enforce it? No. And according to this, what they led the judge to believe is not true, and this is not the same thing that Mac said, not the same thing that Greg Graham's testimony is, and none of this was used by code enforcement when the code complaints were filed. So you got the county trying to cover up for the developer because the county itself is taking county right-of-way and piping it directly into the Choctawhatchee Bay against the ordinance legal requirements. So the county's breaking the law, so they don't want to turn in Sandestin. They're not supposed to issue any services, not review anything, if somebody's in substantial non-compliance. And in recent requests for admissions, they admit that the 8909 ordinance and the 84 settlement agreement over Sandestin's requirements has not been successfully challenged, according to Clay Atkinson and the Warner Law Firm. So here we sit, and you've seen the testimony where Brad Drake says, well, I told Stan Sunday, and Stan Sunday says, Tony Corman and Michael Gainey have completely investigated these complaints of noncompliance. Well, how the hell could they? Because I've got copies of the complaints, and the copies don't even have my ordinance complaint written in there because Michael Lynch and them wouldn't write it down and took it off and fired somebody when they did. You got Bob Horner, the county engineer, that says we should have been reviewing all these plans according to the law that's been adopted. He got fired too. And what has Donna Johns done about this in her district? Not a damn thing. Traffic's out of compliance. Hey, Donna and Danny, I'll read you the Sandestin development order. It says it's designed to be an integrated community where people shop and recreate without having to travel on US 98. Is Driftwood Estates integrated? Is the Indian land that's supposed to be recreation and open space, is it integrated? It's for sale, and it's not even in compliance. They're already out of open space, and Donna and them have no say-so and won't say anything, neither will planning or code, about the fact that more of it's for sale to be developed when it's already over the threshold of what could be developed. Do you people in Sandestin have the ability to go anywhere inside the parks of Driftwood or the Indian lands and use it as your recreation area? Hell no. But that's what the county represents to the state, that it's all in compliance. Do you thousands of people, there's probably over 1,500 people living in Driftwood Estates that are part of an integrated traffic plan that says they drive through Sandestin to go shopping without going on US 98. Well, that's just materially incorrect. Just like their secondary exit is not even in the plat. It's not even in the development order. It's off of Harborview Road, and if they wanted to use it, they'd have to magically be transported past their primary exit that floods. So they can't use their secondary exit unless they have a vehicle capable of driving through a flooded area. Constantly they are trapped out there, which is not the traffic plan that was adopted. It's not integrated. And what Matt Carpenter testified to the state, it's a safety of life issue, and he lied about the issue. How could it fix the flooding when it's in the flooded area? The area where it's supposed to be does not flood. But somebody didn't want that. Burnt Pine didn't want that. It ain't about what people want. It's about what's lawful. Isn't that right? You just can't make this shit up. So now you got a county who basically they bypass your due process, because if your code people refuse to write up your complaint, how can you get due process on it? How can they ignore these state letters? How did Stan Sunday stand up at that meeting, and why did Brad Drake accept that answer that all these letters are unfounded? So the $7 million spent by testimony of taxpayer money trying to fix the out-of-compliance development order so the developers could still build, That's just not fact, Brad. Those letters from the state on what the standard was, the reports from Dr. Harper, the findings by the Florida Board of Professional Engineers that the county engineer was applying the wrong standard, those are all material facts. Well, you got no choice but to sue these people because they won't even take responsibility when they make a mistake. And the bad thing about that is when you don't admit that you have a problem, you'll never solve it, because that's step one to the problem. Admit you got a problem and identify what it is. Well, how does Brian Kellenberger think keeping these same people in charge? Why is Stephen Schoen, with all these letters, issuing development orders to Sandestin when you've got a court order saying that your NOPC is invalid? Right now, the way it sits, in 2014, the Walton County Planning Department issued a statement of fact that the open space was out of compliance, and they had a finding of it. And they have nothing to overturn that now, yet they continue to build. You people who own in Sandestin, you have a right. The rest of us, that is a DRI, a development of regional impact, because it's so large that if they don't follow the rules, it impacts everybody around it, which is us, the people who own land and live around it in Walton County. And thereby we should have standing. And your commission, if they're willing to overlook, because if they're in compliance and borrowing money, isn't that fraud? Isn't it? But the state attorney's not worried about a $500 million fraud. They're not worried about code officers lying and closing out reports falsely. Oh no. They're worried about Chaz Galloway's naked pictures wrongly being on a computer at the county, and whether his rights were violated because he uploaded pictures that he said in sworn deposition on he had no right to privacy over. The guy testified he handed out his password to people. And I think you're going to see somebody testified there was no probable cause. But who needed the great distraction? The man right behind me. Who was seen in the picture on the bench with Chaz right before all this went down? Him and Danny's butthole buddy, Mike Barker, another dirty ex-cop that would rather cover up than admit the truth and put a remedy in place on it. That's why Mike quit. So they went and worked the system, and your state attorney's office, who wouldn't investigate Boots carrying a weapon into a board meeting that he wasn't supposed to, who now, by gosh, is a SRO again, I understand. So he can't follow the rules with adults, and we've put him in charge with children. Yeah, boy, that makes sense, don't it, Mikey? See, that just shows you where all the alliances are. And you're not going to get an investigation from the sheriff's department because they can't afford to investigate it. They can't afford for Sandestin to be non-compliant, can they? Too big to fail. So that's why I'm suing the county, because they just refuse to give me due process. And according to this jury, they're at least 40% responsible. What that jury thought, and I wasn't even asking that jury to find the county responsible, but a jury of people that didn't know shit about it in just a few days figured out that the county was responsible for this shit. But they can't figure it out in 20 years, and they think they're going to fix it by putting the same people in charge of the solution who created the problem. Something don't smell right, does it? Lord. You can't make this shit up. And you can't fix stupid or the corrupt. The only thing you can do is try to get them indicted, which they're not willing to do, or unelect them. Because we deserve better as Americans. We deserve, nothing else is fair. The world ain't fair, life ain't fair. That's the way. If we're going to take our own money, can't we at least get fair treatment for the money that we don't get an option to pay in to fools like this behind me? Elections have consequences, and this is one consequence that's got to go. I've done a detailed rundown on all the stuff him and Donna have absolutely failed at, and Danny's list is much longer than Donna's. Anyway, stand by for the next show on the state legislator, our legislative liaison aide, whatever, that Danny helped get him the job. Oh, yeah, Danny was involved in Tony Corbin getting hired, too. That was the inside deal with Stan. Get the records, do a public records on the application for Corbin's job and how he even found out about it. That's right, Danny admitted that. I'd be glad to take a lie detector. Danny knew that Tony Corbin was getting the job before it ever even hit the street. That's how daily business works in Walton County. It ain't who you know, it's who you pay and who you blow. And that's the Walton County way. Till next time, I'm Alan Osborne. Y'all keep them straight, you hear? They can't keep themselves straight.